If genuine independence prevail, should our leaders be pegged in school buses when attending African summits outside the continent? Is independence indeed achieved in Africa when the same African nations are trapped in the IMF and World Bank economic and political webs of interdependence? Can the summits, hyped as transformative for Africa's development, truly deliver their purpose when held outside of African continent? African youths are running away from Africa. Why? All other continents are coming to Africa to get rich, but we are getting through the most dangerous, the Mediterranean seas to Europe, where those who made it there never got rich. Show me one. Having been excluded from the first, the second, and third industrial revolutions, do we possess the agents as Africans to actively participate in and not miss out on the fourth industrial revolution that is already underway? What is the original religion of Africa? Who orchestrated the division and the naming of Africa's regions into sub-Saharan Africa and north of the Sahara? Why are some African countries maintaining colonially imposed names? Couldn't the locals and real natives of the countries find a new name? Why do we have non-African observers in African elections, yet no African nations are invited to be observers in elections outside of Africa? What is the African Union? What defines the African Union? How many ordinary citizens understand the African Union's purpose, duties, and deliverances? What is the African Union's Agenda 2030? What is Agenda 2063? Do African nations broadcast African Union summit proceedings, or are the deliberations accessible to the citizens? Is the African Union truly representative when its most influential stakeholders are non-African? African leaders spend their terms in office preparing for re-election. Is the current educational curriculum maintaining problematic systems that were left by the former colonizers? Should Africa pursue development studies degrees when for over 50 to 60 years with such degrees a supposedly independent Africa has not been progressing but rather developing less and regressing? Should Africa adopt Ubuntuism, rooted in Africanism, rather than following realism, communism, or liberalism? Why seek validation from non-African voices? Why prioritize outsiders' opinions over our observations and thoughts on African domestic affairs? Why do outsiders demonize our most outstanding leaders, and why do we let them dictate who suits us? Why do we lack our own continental media stations controlling our narratives, our own big brands, our banks, our own projects? Even in language, why do we equate modernity with distancing ourselves from being African? The fluency in non-African languages doesn't measure intelligence. Our education, hyped as independent, is still based on colonial languages. Why don't we have our own continental languages, like Swahili, spoken across eastern parts of Central Africa, with similarities to some of the Southern African languages?